Hi everyone. I'm just waiting a couple more minutes to see if anyone else trickles in. But thank you all for joining today. I hope everyone's doing good. So my name is Emma Parkhouse and I'm the Director of Donor Relations for All Hands and Hearts. So I've been with the organisation for almost a decade in various roles across different departments. And in 2018, I joined the development team where we raised funds for our disaster relief programmes around the world. In 2020, amidst the COVID-19 pandemic, we found that not only were schools closing, but funding for school reconstruction in a post-disaster setting was slowing down. So my focus then shifted from how can we create a sustainable flow of funding for school reconstruction, which then led to the creation of Education for All. So if you have any questions throughout the webinar, please feel free to enter them into the chat box. And then what we're going to do is at the end, we'll have a Q&A session, and then that's where we can answer the questions. But otherwise, if we can't get to the questions today and provide you with an answer because of time, then I'll be sure to send you an email with those answers. So in today's session, you're going to learn about the impacts of disasters and the impacts that they have specifically on education, then why education is so important, especially following crises, and then how we address these challenges through our Education for All Fund. So specifically, how we build thoughtful community-led programs to provide disaster-resilient school campuses to vulnerable communities impacted by disasters around the world. So it's my pleasure to welcome Dr. Vee Kativhu and Mike Ball, our panelists for today's webinar. Vee is a girls' education activist, founder of Empowered by Vee, young leader of the Sustainable Development Goals at the United Nations, graduate of Oxford and Harvard, and has most recently set the record for being the youngest honorary doctor for a UK university. Mike first started his journey with All Hands and Hearts as a volunteer following the Pisco earthquake in Peru in 2007. During this time, he was working in the corporate business management world, but his affinity with disaster relief and the compassion to help others led him to take up a career in the nonprofit world, where 10 years ago, he became a staff member, taking on role as international recovery director, overseeing all of our international recovery programs, of which most were based around school reconstruction. So 2 years ago, Mike became our Chief Operations Officer, leading our programs both internationally and in the US, and that covers both response and recovery side of things. So his wealth of experience and knowledge, not only in the disaster relief field, but specifically in the education space, makes him an invaluable player to All Hands and Hearts. So I would like to thank both of you guys, Mike and Vee, for joining today as our hosts. And before I pass over to Vee, I'd like to show you all a video created by our marketing team, highlighting the importance of education and what it means to the communities that we serve.
La educación para mí es una herramienta muy poderosa para transformar una vida.
Yo entiendo por educación, muy aparte de ser un derecho, yo creo que es la base de todo ser humano.
La educación yo creo que es la base primordial, se basa en aprender, qué aprendemos día a día en la calle, en la casa, parte cultural, parte religiosa, parte educativa.
So I'll hand it over to Vee.
Thank you so much, Emma. That is wonderful. Hi, everybody. My name is Vee, and as Emma mentioned, I am an All Hands and Hearts Education Ambassador, which I'm so proud to be because I really believe in the work that All Hands and Hearts is doing, and I'm so proud to be able to contribute to that in any way that I can. And I was really, really glad in January to be able to go out in Mexico on a site and watch this incredible school being built. And the integration with the community and watching the handover and getting to really see firsthand the impact that All Hands and Hearts are having within the education space in places like that, like in Mexico. And it was just really, really awesome to be part of that rebuilding of the school and to see what the generational impact of that will be. My name is Vee. I'm a girls' education activist, and I like to use social media as a way of advocating for education, but also advocating for youth empowerment, taking the voices of young people and being able to implement what that looks like in the education practices and policies around the world, and using skill-based workshops for students who are underrepresented. And now with All Hands and Hearts, I get to do that in such a much deeper and more impactful way. So really, really happy to be here. And thank you all so much for joining us today on this incredible webinar, which I think will pull a lot of information out and hopefully all take action together. So I believe that education is often one of the first core services, not even just believe, I know it to be a fact, one of the first core services that crumbles when we are following a disaster. And this is a basic human right that gets hampered on all sides for not only the children, but also the families, also the local community, the businesses around, the teachers. So many people are impacted by the loss of education, of school sites when disasters strike. We see things like physical infrastructures of classrooms, bathrooms, and play areas get damaged or destroyed with no end in time for when that's going to get repaired. We see psychological trauma as a result of these disasters and how this can impact a child's ability to learn and to learn in a way that is engaging, meaningful, deep, and preparing them for their future or existence in the world. Socially, we see that these children then lose their everyday connection with friends and peers, which also causes a sense of isolation, something that we saw get heightened, especially during the pandemic, but that's something that's been happening around the clock when disasters strike in places and situations like this. We see that schools are often community hubs, which are vital for things like vaccination, hygiene programs, and without having these schools or these school sites in place, we now have higher risk of illness that increases. We see that schools are often also a place of respite for children, and it also helps them escape unsafe situations, things like child marriage, child trafficking, and gang affiliation, which are things that I am extremely passionate about, and something else that was heightened during the pandemic, where we saw that where you have a child having daily contact with a teacher, they can check on their well-being, they can see how they're doing. There's some kind of level of accountability. And when we lose these school sites to disasters, some children are falling through these gaps because no one is seeing them, no one is able to check in on them. Their safety net of knowing that there is at least an adult that can have an eye on how they're doing, how their well-being is, their safety, that's also taken away. And schools can also be a place that's guaranteeing a meal each day for some of these students. And without being able to have access to these schools, that meal may not be replaced elsewhere. So unfortunately, due to these things and due to climate change, we've seen that a number of children are impacted by disasters. And this is only, sadly, expected to rise with the list of challenges that are continuing to come up as well. And this interruption of education brings such grave disasters for things such as the reduction of educational attainment, the hindrance of their academic performance, and also something that we are dealing with in my line of work is a higher rate of absenteeism. Because if you don't have a place that you can call school or call home, you're not going to show up. And if you're not showing up, we're losing you. And if we're losing you, what's going to happen to these children's futures? So these vulnerabilities, compounded by tertiary effects of the initial disaster itself, such as sickness or malnutrition, may also contribute to students missing school. And in the long run, this could impact their opportunities, their decisions, or their earnings when they reach adulthood. So what we're talking about here is not just the physical impact of the structure of the site of the school. We're also talking about the impact of their future, especially if we don't get them to return, especially if these schools are not rebuilt in time. We might lose these students forever. So too often, these disasters in impoverished and underserved areas are not widely covered by the media, or if they've happened years ago. And especially as someone who works in that media and social media space, I see this happen a lot. It's a constant battle that I'm having of people feeling like the stories or information that I'm bringing to them are not exciting enough. They're not something you can cover. Meanwhile, these disasters are impacting the futures of our future astronauts, doctors, whatever they want to be. We're just missing out on potential futures of young people because places like media don't also want to cover it, and then we can't raise enough funds to be able to contribute to rebuilding these schools, and not only the schools, these futures. So as a result, the philanthropic community is not made aware of what's going on in academic crisis that's affecting these populations. And as a result, this makes it extremely challenging for All Hands and Hearts to sustain our school reconstruction programs. An example where the effects of a major are still being felt in Nepal. Following the disaster of the earthquakes of 2015, All Hands and Hearts continues to this very day to find schools who have not yet received that help or have only received partial support. The earthquakes destroyed more than 8,000 schools across Nepal, and almost a decade later, there are still more than 1,200 that are in need of reconstruction and support. Unfortunately, though, Nepal is not an exception here. And this is a common theme for underdeveloped countries where their resources are already stretched during peacetime. So when they're now hit by disasters, this is amplified even further, putting strain on their most critical resources. And it is in instances like this that All Hands and Hearts, which incredible, and it just it touches my heart, but it's in moments like this that All Hands and Hearts has created the Education for All Fund, which is there to provide support to forgotten communities whereby generations of children would be living in unsafe environments. And the Education for All Fund is phenomenal when you get to learn more about what it does. And when I was hearing all about it on the ground in Mexico, I thought to myself, wow, this is something that we should really all put our support behind, because it means that we don't have to have current and future generations of children who are missing out on learning and being in safe environments, receiving quality education and shaping their futures. And I would like to hand it over to someone who knows even more in depth about the incredible work of All Hands and Hearts, and that is our incredible Chief Operating Officer, Mike, who I also got to spend a lot of time with in Mexico and learn more from about the years of work that All Hands and Hearts has put into education. And yeah, I think it's going to be a real treat for you guys to hear from him. So over to you, Mike.
Thank you, Vee. Thank you so much for the intro. And as Vee touched on, the impact of children missing school, it's really incredible, you know, for the impact that it has on individuals and just the generational impact. So I think Vee's kind of highlighted just the damage that happens, and then I'd like to touch on really kind of what we do essentially and how we do it. So personally, I've been in the organization for 10 years now, supported many different programs, but as Emma touched on, international was kind of where I started the work, and particularly on the school rebuild side. And I have a real passion for it for many, many reasons. But when you're working and seeing when you return children to school and the impact not just on the students but on the community and the generational impact, it's incredible to see, and it does really take a village, as they say, to do so. So what we have in this organization is an incredible capacity to design and safely build and repair schools, and then to ensure that children can get back to school. And there's so much complexity in it for us as an organization, but it gives children the basic human right, which is safe education for all. And I think, as we'll touch on, it's something that we do really well as an organization. So across the last 20 years, we're looking at 356 schools in 16 countries, impacting over 122,000 students. So if you think about those numbers, that's a really significant amount of children who have been impacted to return to school post-disaster. It's an incredible achievement, I think, for us as an organisation, but also when you think about the size of the problem, when there have been 30,000 schools destroyed in that time, and sadly 35,000 children have lost their lives within schools in that time, it just shows you that as an organisation, we're working hard to try and return children to safe, disaster resilient schools, and also why disaster resilience is so crucial. When you look at fatalities within schools, if you build a safe, strong school, then you give children the chance to get out. Hopefully the building will stay up and will withhold the event, but it will also give people the chance to evacuate. And if you train and provide disaster management training, people then understand how to evacuate as well. So there's so much that we're doing, but also there's so much more to do, essentially. So I'd like to touch on is just the frameworks that we work within. So you have the United Nations, Sustainable Development Goals. So there are 17 different goals with 169 different targets. We really look at 4 of these as an organization, from good health and well-being as SDG 3 to quality education, to clean water and sanitation, and then also to sustainable cities and communities. There's many, many different examples of this work that we do, which I'll go on to talk about. This is the framework that we work within. It gives us really the targets that we're working towards, but then also we work within the Worldwide Initiative for Safer Schools as well. So we have UN SDGs at the top, and you go down to this next level where we look at how do we then put a process in place for schools. There are 3 main pillars that we look at, which is the safer facilities, the school disaster management, and then risk resiliency and education. So just to kind of touch on what each of these are and how we work within these areas. So safer learning facilities is all about protecting children from death, injury, and violence within schools with the school selection, design, construction, and maintenance. So how we do this, essentially, it starts with in-house expertise. So we have our program development team, which is led by Carolina. I'm not sure if she's on the call, but the incredible Carolina helps to lead program development, where essentially it's our team of experts with architects and engineers. And then we go out to communities post-event, working with the government to understand where we can support. And then we look at designs which exist or bespoke designs which we can do as an organization. So many examples we have here, such as when we worked recently in Peru, where the school was impacted from flooding, preventing children to get back to school and then stopping education, was to come in with a design which we designed in-house to raise the school to over 1 meter, and then also with a steel frame for seismic activity. So essentially it's not just a safer facility, but it's disaster resilient for future as well, to make sure that after future events that sadly will happen, if it's in this area and for this school, children can return as quickly as possible to education as possible, which is crucial. The picture that you have here is actually a different school as well. So this was through our program development team, an award-winning design, which is looking at the roof of the school, an innovation design with community-inspired architecture, looking at local materials, sustainable materials, and also looking at how to reduce the temperature in the classroom using natural methods. So for us, really, it's about the safer facilities, but it's not just the school. Then you look at essentially the wash facilities, so the water, the sanitation, and the hygiene. We look at the fencing, the infrastructure, preventing people coming into the school. We'll look at then also the facilities for children who are walking to school, and for some places and in some countries, walking hours to get to school, to look at the hazards along the way. So it's a holistic approach of the safer facilities, but that's not just the classroom, that's clearly the compound, the school, and everything around that, from the wash, the education, and the training. So at the heart of everything we talk about and everything we do, essentially, is strong, safe, disaster resilient facilities that enable children to learn in safe facilities, but also, if there are future events, it enables education to happen quickly as possible, as the school should withstand the event and allow children back in, which is absolutely crucial. We then have as a second pillar within this that we focus on, it's school disaster management. So as you see kind of in this photo, so fun times as well, but essentially really looking at where we can bring in training. So once we've built a strong, safe facility and brought in the infrastructure around that, it's critical that we work with the school and the local government to look at disaster risk reduction management. So this is then the training. This could be first aid training within the community. It can then be training that we've done recently within the Philippines to bring the school together to look at evacuation routes, to look at what to do post-disaster, to look at the maintenance of the school. So really focusing on how we do training within the community to say, here's the best way for you to use the school to make sure that it's safe in future. And then the third pillar that we look at within this is the risk resiliency in education. So essentially, this is where we look at disaster drills. This is it's harder for us to implement this model, but essentially it's looking at child rights and child protection and resilience. So here we'll work again with local partners, with the local government, and with our teams to look at how we provide training and drills. And this is particularly looking at within the education of the school for children to understand what to do in an event, how to get out, where to go, and then working with the community there. So you have at the top the UN SDGs. We then look at the Worldwide Safer School Initiative, where we have these 3 pillars that we work within. All of that at the heart of getting children back to safe facilities, essentially. But then what we look at really as an organization is to say, we have the school, we have the setup, we have the training, but what else can we bring in? And I think for us, it's crucial to say, how do we facilitate? Like, what else can we do within the communities that we're working in? So I also want to touch on beyond the infrastructure, essentially, and our work that we do. So we have the Female Mason Training Program, which this photo shows an example of, where we implement this in Nepal and the Philippines, which is essentially looking in countries where there's a stigma for women working within the construction industry, to provide opportunities and to say that we will train for 5 to 6 months to give women the opportunity to work in this area and to build the skills to do so. And it's not just about the skills that we're building, it's really about working and showing and empowering the community to show that there are opportunities and that we're using our school as a hub to train and develop. So this is a program that we have worked in Nepal for several years. It's now in the Philippines. We're looking to implement it in Peru. And it's really critical for us to say, again, how do we provide further opportunities and inspire children within the school and inspire women within and girls within the school to see that there are many, many different opportunities available, and looking at the stigmas there. We also look at WASH infrastructure. So this is a massive, massive part of the work that we do. We touched on it with SDG 6, but essentially poor sanitation directly correlates with missed education, essentially. So when you look at illness, when you look at menstrual hygiene, there's a direct reason why children miss school because of sanitation and water. So one thing we do is to look at how do we provide clean water and access to water for both sanitation and for drinking within all of our schools. So this is a massive part of the work that we do, and then we link this then with training. If that's then in Guatemala, where we ensure we have rainwater harvesting on the roofs. If it's in Mexico, where we did the same. In Nepal, where we built a 50,000 litre water retention tank to make sure that the school could essentially build the capacity of water over 3 months and use that over the following 9 months. So this is really a massive part of the work that we do to, again, ensure that we have the school, but you have the access for water as well. And then finally, one more point to touch on for beyond infrastructure is the training that we do with local partners. So essentially, the other work that we do is we look at facilitating training in schools. So again, if you look at Guatemala, where we work with Period to look at female menstrual management, you then look at the Philippines, where we work with Streetlight, who are a child protection expert, to bring their expertise into school to help children to understand about child protection and education. In Nepal, again, we've done multiple training across disaster risk reduction and WASH training in education. That our role as an organization is to respond to events, but the way that we do it is essentially how do we engage the community and how do we facilitate within the community? So for volunteers, for donors, for the community, we bring everyone together and to make sure that the work that we do goes beyond building a disaster resilient school. All of these steps that we're talking about very quickly, it's about building a disaster resilient community and building a hub and having that knowledge that spreads beyond the school to support more than just the child, but the family and the community around it. And that's a massive, massive part of the work that we do. And then we also have coming up very quickly, as I know we're short on time, essentially the programs that we're working on. So right now we are in several different communities and supporting multiple schools. In Mexico, we're currently working at the moment with a school opening due at the end of the year. And then we're planning a second school in Mexico next year in a similar community. We're working in the Philippines at the moment with 2 schools currently, looking to have them both complete from October 24 and then the end of this year. And that's responding to an event in Mexico from the Philippines from 2-3 years ago that shows the impact go. And then in Nepal, we're soon to open our next school rebuild in Nepal to support an entire community which has been overlooked. And will finish on the 10-year anniversary. So as Vee touched on at the start, for the 1,200 schools needed in Nepal, still there is a sizable gap in safe education. and we are working in these areas and hoping to add many more to our list.
Amazing. Thanks so much, Mike. That was incredible. And Vee, thank you as well. Okay. I'm gonna move on then to the wrapping up, unfortunately, of the webinar for today. So I'd like to thank you all again for joining this session, and I hope you found it both informative and inspiring. If you want to learn more about All Hands and Hearts, you can easily go to our website and type in allhandsandhearts.org, or you can find us across different social media platforms as well, using the handle All Hands and Hearts. I also want to plug in here as well that we've got a rapid response webinar taking place on Thursday at 1 p.m. So that's this Thursday. So if you want to discover how we respond to crises through locally driven initiatives, then please follow the link that I'm just about to put in the chat box here. But you can also find the link to this in our LinkedIn account as well. And then I just want to let you know that, there's many ways that you guys could get involved with us, whether it's volunteering on one of our programs or joining one of our bespoke donor trips where we facilitate a group of global donors to join us on program and then also experience cultural activities that they have to offer, then we'd be more than happy to facilitate that as well. And we've actually got our next donor trip happening in October. It's towards the end of October in Mexico. So that's an opportunity to go and see a school reconstruction build as well. And then you can also support, of course, this crucial work through a donation or even just spreading the word of the work that we do through your platforms and through your networks. Any way that you support, we're so appreciative, because honestly, without you all, we wouldn't be able to continue to do the work that we do, and we wouldn't be able to provide more students around the world with safe schools. So thank you all so much for joining again. Gloria, thank you for your comment as well. Thank you for joining, and I hope everyone has a good rest of your day. Take care. Bye.